On Saturday night, Oleksandr Usyk proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that he is the best heavyweight in the world and the best of this era. Now, Oleksandr Usyk, probably since at cruiserweight, he certainly got the respect he deserved. A tremendous run at cruiserweight. And when you look at the cruiserweight division now, you have Apataya, Breedis is still knocking around. You have Bill Smith and Riakporhe fighting for a vacant title. You have Gilberto Soto Ramirez, picked up a title from Gulamarian. You look at it, and I know on a Don King show, wow, Don King has a cruiserweight world champion. You look at the cruiserweight division now, and it pales in comparison to what it was 6-7 years ago. You look at the World Boxing Super Series, you had the likes of Usyk, you had Dorticos, you had Briedis, you had Gassiev, Oleksandr Usyk. We'll talk about his run at cruiserweight in this video. We're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into certainly his championship run at cruiserweight as well as heavyweight. I don't really want to call it a career review necessarily. I want to give my 2 cents on why I believe he is the best of this era. He proved that, or this generation, I'd say, of heavyweight. He proved that beyond any shadow of a doubt. And why it's about time. And he is getting the respect he deserves, finally. He is a fighter, along with the likes of Inoue, where he is a fighter who doesn't just go and set those goals to become undisputed. But he'll travel. He doesn't seem to give a damn. He'll go to the opponent's backyard if he has to. He's that confident in his ability. And his ability has been fantastic. You know, Usyk, when he turned over, and bear in mind, you know, his amateur career speaks for itself. He had an extensive amateur career, Olympic gold medalist. You know, I think he was won at the World Championships as well. He definitely won something in the European Games. Not sure if it was bronze or silver. Gold or silver. I'm not 100% sure. But a tremendous amateur. Turned pro, made it to 9-0 with 9 knockouts. He wasn't showing devastating power, you know, certainly not. It wasn't like Deontay Wilder where he was knocking guys flat out. But he was IBF mandatory challenger, and apologies if you can hear a tractor going up the road there. But he was WBO mandatory challenger against Krzysztof Glowacki, and this really is where we saw what Oleksandr Usyk is all about. September of 2016, he picked up his first world title, WBO cruiserweight title. It was a fantastic performance. And Glowacki, you know, people could look and say, that's the guy who got knocked out by Riakporhe, he got knocked out by Okoli. At the time, he'd beaten Marco Huck, who was a long-reigning champion. He defended against Steve Cunningham, who, as we know, gave Tyson Fury a very hard fight. And he went in there against Usyk, and Usyk in Poland. And I remember actually on Sky did the commentary. I think Dave Colwell or Tony Bellew. I can't remember who the commentary team were. I think Dave Colwell might have been one of the commentators. But the actual Polish team, we could see their scorecards, and they had a bizarre score. They had Usyk winning, but it was like razor close on their scorecard. Have you ever seen this fight? It was not close. Not even close. Mickey Vann was actually one of the referees, a famous, well-known judge or well-known referee in the UK. Refereed, I think, until the early 2000s. A very good referee was Mickey Vann. And he got the win there. Straight away, he defends it on one of Lomachenko's undercard. No, sorry, that wasn't one of Lomachenko's undercard. He defended it in America against Tbiso Machunu. That was on the undercard of Bernard Hopkins versus Joe Smith Jr. And Tbiso Machunu, who was an excellent fighter, and Oleksandr Usyk, that was one of his best performances at cruiserweight. Goes and then fights on the Jason Sosa Lomachenko undercard against the American and Michael Hunter. Michael Hunter early on had a lot of success in that fight, but Oleksandr Usyk, once he took control, it was just Oleksandr Usyk all the way. He nearly closed the show in the last round, and that was in America. So he's fought a Polish fighter in Poland, an American in America. He then fights Marco Huck, a German in Germany, in the Max Schmeling arena. Marco Huck had seen better days at that point, but that was one of Usyk's most devastating performances at cruiserweight. He beat the living crap out of Marco Huck, and that was in Germany. He then goes to Riga in Latvia to fight Mairis Briedis, which I still maintain that is his toughest fight of his career. Mairis Briedis, tough as nails, gave Usyk the hardest fight of his career. That was in Latvia. And that was the semi-final of the World Boxing Super Series, which was actually meant to take place. The final was meant to take place in Saudi Arabia, believe it or not. It didn't end up taking place in Saudi Arabia. It ended up taking place in Moscow, Russia. He fought Murat Gassiev, who was a Russian fighter in Russia. And that was probably that might be his best performance at cruiserweight. He absolutely schooled Gassiev from start to finish. Then he could have moved up to heavyweight. Tony Bellew mentioned his name. after David Haye. He went to the UK, to Manchester, to fight Tony Bellew, defend his undisputed cruiserweight world titles. Although Bellew gave a good account of himself, just to keep up with Oleksandr Usyk took all of his strengths. Oleksandr Usyk gets the win, 8-round knockout. Finally decides to move to heavyweight nearly a year later against Ches Witherspoon in America, in Chicago. The Chisora fight kept getting pushed back, we know why, and ultimately he ended up fighting behind closed doors in the Wembley Arena. Chisora, a Brit in London, of all places, he gets the win there. Travels to London again a year later to fight Anthony Joshua. This is when we're at his heavyweight run. So he's already fought Witherspoon. Witherspoon was an easy gimme debut. Chisora, tough as old boots as Derek Chisora. And Chisora did have some success in there, but it was an Usyk fight. It was Usyk clearly. The Joshua fight, I don't think I can speak any highly of that fight. That might be Usyk's best performance at heavyweight. It was brilliant. It was a brilliant performance. Again, in the champion's backyard. What more do you want? Rematches Anthony Joshua in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Although it was technically on neutral ground, Joshua was very much the A-side fighter in that fight. Defends against Daniel Dubois in a homecoming of sorts in Poland. This was kind of on the border with Poland and Ukraine, so it was the closest you'll get to a homecoming fight for Oleksandr Usyk. Beats Daniel Dubois, very good performance. And now he's obviously fought Tyson Fury and beaten him in what was I felt it was a fairly easy fight to score when you look back on it. Oleksandr Usyk won 116, 111, and I'm being a bit generous with that one. But you look at this resume, it's just world title fight after world title fight. Good fighter, away in their own backyard. He is what we want in boxing. You know, so often we hear people say we want a fighter who's willing to fight everybody. There you go. We want a fighter who, if he needs to, he'll travel. There you go. Oleksandr Usyk is that. And for the longest time, I did feel he was being a bit disrespected by the boxing, what would you say, the boxing fraternity, the boxing media, establishment, whatever you want to call it. When Anthony Joshua beat Francis Ngannou, you had people saying, you know, oh, never mind the Fury fight, let's just go and do Fury Joshua. No, excuse me, no. We want to see undisputed. Usyk has the titles. Fury has a belt. We want to see undisputed. When Anthony Joshua beat Otto Wallin and then beat Francis Ngannou, you were saying, oh, well, now it's a different story. I'm not having a major go at Anthony Joshua. I'm not having a go at anybody. I'm just saying that you've beaten a guy who realistically, you know, his claim to fame was having a competitive fight, which he ultimately lost to Tyson Fury, and a guy who was a ranked novice in the second pro fight. And all of a sudden that rights the wrong of the two previous fights where Oleksandr Usyk schooled Anthony Joshua. No. Oleksandr, and that again, it showed like that people were almost dismissive of Oleksandr Usyk, you know, as if those two back-to-back wins were flukes somehow. No, they weren't. Oleksandr Usyk has well and truly shown himself to be the best of this generation of heavyweights. It's really incredible that there was a lot of people, even when he was at cruiserweight, saying that this guy at heavyweight, he is going to cause some serious problems. I personally did think he would cause problems, but I genuinely didn't think he'd end up being undisputed. That surprised me. It shows that the talent that this man has. He's a phenomenal fighter, and I think that we might be near the end. In fact, I'm pretty sure we are. If that was his last fight, or if he rematches Tyson Fury and then looks to bow out, which, to be honest with you, he'd be well in his right not to rematch him with all the shenanigans Fury's done over the last few years. But if he did and he beat him again, I don't think there's any better way to go out. He's done what he's wanted to do. He's been undisputed champion. Very few get to finish this sport at the top. Very few do. Even if he rematches Tyson Fury, he won't be introduced as undisputed champion because the IBF, maybe more of those belts will be fractured. So for Oleksandr Usyk, I like to say that I'm lucky enough to have actually got to see this talent in his prime. I've watched the majority of his fights live. It's been a pleasure to be able to say that. And I don't have any kids yet, but whenever I do, I would like to have them someday. I think I'll probably be one of those dads, if they are into boxing, who will say, you know, the next heavyweight that they might watch, the next heavyweight champion might not even be born yet, but I'll always be probably saying, how would he have done against Oleksandr Usyk? You should have seen Oleksandr Usyk in his prime live. I got the chance to see him, to watch his fights live. It was amazing. And we need to look at Oleksandr Usyk, what he's been able to achieve at cruiserweight. I mean, arguably, he's the greatest cruiserweight of all time. You know, only Evander Holyfield has the... And even then, I don't think Holyfield really does. I think Holyfield, as good as he was at cruiserweight, I think Usyk's run was even better. To come to heavyweight and have two fights straight in against Anthony Joshua, a unified champion, to rematch him, to fight his mandatory in a young, hungry fighter like Daniel Dubois, and then to ultimately beat the boxing establishment, because they weren't going to do Usyk any favours. The referee did a disgraceful job. One of the judges had Fury ahead. You had people, you know, Eddie Hearn was picking Tyson Fury to win, as far as I believe. Everyone knew that if Fury wins, it's Joshua next, and that's what the boxing establishment wanted, because it was an absolute cash bonanza. I mean, generations upon generational wealth there. I mean, that's a king's ransom you'd get for that fight. And Usyk was able to come through it and say, no, I'm going to be so good, I'm going to be so dominant, you're not going to get a chance. And they didn't. And credit to him. I'm absolutely delighted to have said I got a chance to watch Oleksandr Usyk. I've never seen him fight live, which I probably never will. But at least I got to watch his fights on TV when they happened live in the moment and say, I've seen the best heavyweight of this era. And I'm very privileged to be able to say that. Tremendous fighter, tremendous talent. And yeah, enjoy. If he is going to bow out, what a career. If he carries on, let's see what he does. But that's what I got to say on this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. Peace.